Welcome, everybody. Today we're talking about conferences and events and how we can really create that impressive and impactful experience for our attendees. Considering the Herculean effort of planning and executing a conference, we want to be as successful as possible. So for the next hour or so, we're here with Randall Craig, Hall of Fame speaker, who has presented at and attended over 500 events to offer some fresh ideas and insider perspective to help create a truly memorable experience, conference and experience. So a little bit about Randall. He's founded several successful startups. He's held a long-time position at a Big Four consulting firm. He was a senior executive at an American public company, the author of 8 books in the Speaker Hall of Fame, master facilitator, master presenter, obviously, master at conferences. He's helped over 100 organizations scale, and he works with me at the Brain Trust Professional Institute, helping organizations grow their businesses. So we'll start off as usual with some ideas from Randall to get us moving. Then we'll flip into questions either from you, the audience, or from me. You're welcome to come on camera, come on mic, type your questions in the chat, and I'll read them out loud. So Randall, when it comes to your experience with conferences, tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly. What do we, the people, need to know?
Well, first of all, you show up at the conference and everything is amazing. There's speakers, there's food, there's events, there's an energy and everything. I think most people don't realize, they don't really understand it. It doesn't happen by miracle. It happens from a lot of hard work from event planners, from the organizers, from the committees that chooses the speakers and makes the decisions of the conference, from the hotel or venue staff. And all of these things sadly don't get as much play because frankly all of these things together make an incredible conference. And when a number of these things don't work out particularly well, the attendees feel it. And so what I wanted to do, is just provide a couple, quick insights. And for me as a professional speaker, I think I've got an interesting thing because I work with a lot of event planners, meeting planners, leaders who are organizing events, etc. So I kind of have a different perspective. And because I've seen so many different conferences and events, it's always interesting to see where all that innovation is. And of course, we've got some ideas as well. So point number one, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to put on an awesome conference or meeting. And when I say awesome, I don't mean just the experience there is actually a great experience, but that the actual purpose of the conference achieves the business objectives of the sponsoring organization. Is it to improve engagement? Is it to build community? Is it to kick off something that's particularly big? Is it to inspire? Is it to teach? Is it to improve member retention and member engagement, or improve member value? Or there's a whole bunch of other things that are possible objectives, and that's kind of where, when I say a great conference, that's kind of the measures that I think are particularly good. And sometimes I think, and we'll hopefully surface some ideas in this Q&A. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. We don't know the levers that might be possible, even if you're a professional meeting planner, excuse me, an experienced event organizer. Sometimes we forget about some of the things, and at least from my perspective, I'm hoping I could share a few things that people say, oh, I never thought of that. Or, gee, that would make a difference at our upcoming conference, or so on. So let's open it for questions, Ron. Yeah.
Randall, I want to do a little segment here called Compare and Contrast. Okay, starting with who puts on the best conferences and events? Is it the association world or the corporates? You have lots of experience with both, and perhaps you can tell us and learn from each other, perhaps.
Oh, man. And this is the challenge because I don't know what questions Rania or anybody on this are going to ask. They're very, very different animals, right? They're very, very different things. So for associations, it's the question of what's that one time of the year, or semi-annual time of year where can we bring everyone together, where we can rekindle the energy, where we can share what the board and the volunteers and the staff are actually doing. Where we can sort of level up, upskill everybody to some of the latest thinking and everything, and hopefully, inspire people to be more engaged in their with their professional peers along the way. A lot of it is about creating community and everything. On the other hand, the corporate events are very much ones that are speaking to a particular agenda. Maybe it's a sales kickoff or an all hands meeting or a town hall or something where The role, for example, of the speaker, just talking about myself for a moment, might be very different. What are the particular objectives? Is it to motivate or is it to train? Right? Is it to introduce new topics or subjects, or maybe to extend some of the learning that might have happened, say, at a leadership retreat or something like that? I think they're different animals, but there's an awful lot that's the same. And the most important thing that's the same, and sometimes we forget about it, is the fact that um, on one hand, there's what the leadership, okay, whether it's the board and association or a management team in a corporate setting, what they want to send out to everybody. And then on the other hand is what do people want to receive? For associations, people have to write a check to actually attend. They've got to take time out of their busy day. They've got a choice. They can go or they can not go. Right. So what do they need to get to for them to be able to say, or to go to their bosses and say, please, can we pay for this, etc. What do they need in order to make the case? How can we give them stuff that they can take back to make true the promise that this is actually a useful kind of thing? In a corporate sense, the boss says you got to attend, so everyone attends, right? And so we have to make sure that people, some of whom may have shown up with I don't really want to be here. I've got so many deadlines. I got so many other things. What a waste of time. How do you sort of make it so good that even the people who are naysayers or neutral will come by and say, that actually was an amazing experience. I learned a lot. It helped me connect with my peers, my colleagues. We were able to accomplish a lot of things I didn't think it was possible, right? And for the people who are keen, once again, it's something to look forward to. So those are two of the things. Excuse me. Um, I can go on and on, but let's see what other questions you have.
Okay, my next compare and contrast question. Talk to me about the one-day conference versus the multi-day conference. So we do a lot of talk with our clients about efficiency here, and there's so much that says, 95% of our success is, based on 5% what we actually do, so and we also like fill the time we have to accomplish, so can you talk about maybe like the one day
Yeah.
versus the 3 day or 5 day? Like, what do you suggest?
So, it costs an awful lot to put on a conference. I'm thinking about associations for a moment here. It costs an awful lot. There's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of organization, right? The members only have so much budget for this kind of thing. And so, the old days of being away for a week for a conference are long, long, long gone. So most conferences are 2, 3 days, 3.5 days if there's a pre-conference, etc. But so there's that sort of calculus that actually goes on. The one-day conferences, in a certain sense, sometimes they're called summits, or sometimes they're focused on a particular topic. So, for example, leadership or AI, or back in the day, maybe it was social media or engagement, okay, or whatever the topic is, right? And so, so usually these single-purpose one-day events where people say, okay, so I'm going to have a focused curriculum that deals with a particular topic from multiple perspectives. Okay, those usually are one day. Rarely will you have a larger, like an annual convention, for example, that happens in one day. Why? Because there's all of the travel time and the costs and everything. So it makes sense to sort of have a little bit wider, a little bit wider. So that's kind of how I see the other things. I do think though that since COVID, where we've gotten used to webinars, the question becomes, okay, how do we make sure that whatever we're doing in the real world, also we're able to use some of that for the rest of our membership or the rest of the corporate people who are not able to attend, right? And the idea of having hybrid events where part of it's live and part of it's not are incredibly complicated, very difficult to do. It's doable, right? But you've got to have very, very, very experienced speakers to be able to engage both the online audience and the live audience, right? So sometimes it's not just multi-day versus one day, but also online audience and live audience, live in-person audience.
Okay, next compare and contrast. Networking time versus content. People go to conferences to network, yet agendas are packed with sitting and listening to people broadcasting to you. With the internet and endless on-demand opportunities for TED Talks, Ed Talks, you name it. Should conferences like be more focused on quality networking opportunities? Like, what do you think?
So interesting. One of the topics I actually speak on is networking, and oftentimes they'll do that near the very beginning of the conference to give people the tools and the language and the comfort to be able to build stronger relationships amongst everybody who's actually there, and those relationships will take afterwards. Certainly there's a joke that goes around, which is this, we're spending more money for the coffee break than we are for the professional speaker. And it's sad but true. Coffee does cost a lot in a lot of these venues and everything. But the purpose of the coffee break, the bio breaks, the lunch breaks, the before, the after, and everything actually is to network, and more particularly to build community and affinity, and sometimes in a corporate sense, sometimes it's alignment, and sometimes it's those conversations that happen outside the formal sessions themselves that are actually, for some people, the most valuable. Somebody's looking for some career advice, or maybe they're between roles, for example, having conversations with people. Or maybe you want to have a chance to learn a little bit more about a neat concept, for example. So, when I go to a conference, I typically stay the entire day. And yeah, I might be on stage for 45 minutes or an hour and a half, whatever it is. But I find the thing that's most exciting is the hallway conversations where people are asking me questions, right? And it's not just me as the speaker, where that's the case. It's all the people that when people sit down for lunch and you don't know most of the people or some of the people at the table, you connect. And I think that there's a very powerful role for that. There has to be, right? Otherwise, why wouldn't we just sit at home and do it via Zoom, or pick up a book and do it that particular way? It's the human connection, but it's building a community of interest. You may have a particular role in an organization, but you also have a role within your industry or within your function or whatever it is. And spending time with other people who've got those same interests means that you'll be cross-pollinating your ideas and thoughts and perspectives back and forth, and you'll leave the event far, far stronger, not just in terms of relationships, but also your knowledge. So yes, having people like me who can share knowledge and motivate from a stage is important, but the other, it's got to be woven through in a particular way. I'll just say one other thing. Oftentimes, many conferences have a VIP session at the very, very beginning, maybe the evening before or early the first day, which is meant for first timers, the VIPs. Maybe their lanyards have got a little VIP tag or first timer tag, where maybe there's a couple of the veterans of the association or leading lights who will talk about how to get the most out of the actual conference itself. And that's really important because that makes the newbies, if you want to call them that, feel a lot more comfortable. And it also helps them sets the expectations with respect to what their role is in getting the most out of the conference itself.
Kara here is sharing our evaluations show attendees value networking very highly. They do get frustrated when the program is so full of content that they don't have time for quality networking. Yes, we see the same. Okay, next compare and contrast question, Randall. The free speaker or the paid speaker? So you are a little bit biased here in your place in your career, thankfully.
No, no, I'm not. I'm
You're
not.
not, you're not.
I'm not, honestly. Well, so
Let's
so
hear.
so let's talk about the types of speakers. There's basically four types of speakers. One is called the celebrity speaker, right? You want to get Bill Clinton to speak at your conference. You'll pay the 250,000 or whatever that his current speaking fee is, and because that's a celebrity, people will choose to come to the conference because they'll have a chance to actually um, hear that person speak. And there's different degrees of celebrity, obviously. So that's a celebrity speaker, and you're paying basically for their name recognition. You're borrowing, okay, their name as a way to put bums in seats. The second kind of speaker is what I call the vendor. These are people who have stuff to sell. Maybe they sell technology, maybe they're consultants, but they're vendors, they sell and they would love to have an audience where they can talk about something which then results in more leads coming into their funnel. And I think most experienced event planners understand that vendors are there to sell, right? Some vendors are exceptionally good speakers, etc. And sometimes there's a way to say, well, you could do a vendor section, at a certain time, early in the morning, for example, or at a certain other time. So people, if they wish to have the demo or the, whatever it is from that particular vendor. So, The vendors typically would pay you for the slot, right? It's a privilege to be up in front of people, and it's a breakout or a keynote, whatever it is, but they would pay. That's vendors. Now, from an audience perspective, it's very exciting, okay, to listen to a celebrity. Maybe you understand a lot more about kind of what it's like being I don't know, the wife of a president or prime minister, or whatever, Olympic athlete, whatever it is. For vendors and everything like that, the audience is often, some of them might care, others might not like the fact that they're being sold to, right? So typically you'd have those as a breakout. So anybody who goes there kind of knows, okay. The other two category speakers are what I call the industry speakers. So for example, somebody who's the president of a certain organization, or the head of a regulator, or the head of whatever it happens to be, an academic. All these people already get a paycheck from their day job. And the reason why they're an important part of a conference is because they can bring the perspective of their research in the case of academics, or their organization is in the case of a regulator, or a corporate leader, etc. And they can bring that to bear. And that's also important for people to know. And guess what? Because they already are being paid a salary, okay, usually there's no charge. They do not charge, or maybe there's you can pay them a slight honorarium or a donation to a charity. But those are industry speakers. There's a role for those. They're free, if you will, and they add a lot of value to the audience. But unfortunately, they might not be actually professional communicators. They might have that title, but they might be boring, or they might not find a way to get the message through in a way that causes people to remember it, let alone act on it. They're not, most of the time, they're not professional communicators. The fourth group is what I call professional speakers, such as myself. And a professional speaker might have very deep knowledge on a particular topic. They may be a thought leader. They may have written a whole bunch of books. They may be in the media a fair amount, okay, but need not be. They usually will come up near the top of Google if you actually do a search for what they are. So, for example, if you do a search for choosing a business growth speaker, okay, beyond the advertisements, I'll usually come up at the very top. So that's a professional speaker. But there's two types of professional speakers. One of the ones like me, a thought leader, who knows how to communicate. The other are the ones whose business model is not to be paid a fee for that knowledge, but rather their business model is to sell programs and resources from the stage. So they'll give you little niblets of information, but the whole thing is getting people to write a check at the back of the room for their course on this, or their books on that, or their, in the olden days, it was DVD and CD sets, okay, and so on. But they don't charge, right? And so all those speakers, the celebrities, the vendors, the industry speakers, and professional speakers, and the two types of professional speakers, may or may not have a role in the stage. But I have to tell you, it's interesting as a professional speaker, when somebody says to me, you know, it's a privilege to be able to speak to ours, and it's great exposure for your business. Well, I don't have stuff to sell. Okay. And the people are likely to say yes, would say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to sell this. I'm going to sell this. I'm going to sell this. If you're not paying the talent to actually share their knowledge, the talent has got to find a way to make the money up somewhere. And there will be a sales pitch, and people will not appreciate it unless they're told this is going to be a sales pitch, in which case you're in the category of being a vendor again, right? And I think this is a very, very interesting thing. I've seen incredible speakers who are, speak to sell, if you will. Okay. But everybody who's in the room knows that they're going to be given a sales pitch on real estate investing, or on a particular kind of program of whatever it happens to be. Right. And I think that it's very interesting, if we actually want to make a difference, excuse me, we have to make sure that we're paying for what we actually want. Otherwise, the conference and the attendees will end up paying in a different kind of way. So I see there's a question from Audrey. Is a keynote speaker an essential part of a conference? Is there an ROI for having one? That's a really good question. I'd say, yeah. If you're going to do a 1 day kind of thing, you want to make sure the people in front of the stage are knowledgeable. They truly have depth in their particular area. They're going to convey the knowledge, but they do it in a motivating way. Keynote speakers are are, there's different types. There's ones that are purely motivational, right? They're telling you about their journey up the Everest or their journey through life. They don't have limbs, or they've had a terrible disease, whatever it is, but they've had an extraordinary life, and they've got some lessons for that for the group. And because they're such expert communicators, guess what? Everybody will be motivated by it, right? But the question is sometimes motivated to do what, right? For me, I'm not a motivational speaker, but I'm a content-oriented speaker who motivates, right? So for some, for example, there's two keynotes in a conference. I might be one. A pure motivational speaker might be another one. The idea is you have to make sure that people are excited about it. You want to have people say, this is the best conference ever. You want to have people say after they leave, this has made a difference to me. The organization as a whole made a difference to me. Because if you just have the entire conference being breakout sessions, breakout sessions, breakout sessions, right? It's not the same. I'll also say one other thing. Most people, there's a joke in the professional speaking world. If you can't make them laugh, you're not going to have much of a business. Okay, and the reason why that's kind of a funny one is because if you're able to get people emotionally involved through stories or through having an emotional impact on them during the experience of your presentation, they'll actually recall what you have to say, and they're more likely to act on what you actually wanted. So, the question of what's the ROI, okay, is what do you actually want that keynote speaker to actually do? Is it just to entertain? Or is there some strategic sort of angle that you want them to take? Or is it a bunch of tactical things that people really need to learn in order to be successful? Right? Or is it an attitude change that'll make a difference to your culture? Right? And once you sort of say, okay, so what's the excuse me, what's the benefit to me? Then you'll be able to figure out the ROI. I'll also say that the better the keynote speaker, the more customization that they'll actually do, which means it'll be a relevant to your audience kind of thing rather than just a, I don't know, generic thing, which is boring, by the way, for the speaker as well as the audience. Thanks, Audrey.
Speaking of boring and unique experiences for the audience, Randall, there are so many organizations hosting conferences on the same topic, trying to target the same audiences. What can conference organizers do to stand out? Is it through those keynotes, the big names? Like, what do you suggest?
Well, listen, please hire me, okay? And of course, that'll bring in people and all. No, no, no. I have to tell you this, okay? What's the goal here? Like, honestly, what is the goal? Okay, is the goal, for example, to put bums in seats, or is the goal to build a community and alignment amongst the attendees? So, for example, in a corporate setting, it's always to build alignment, which means what are the other stimuli that actually happen to the actual attendees before and afterwards? With respect to the associations and not-for-profit market, it should be, at least our view, is building community. What does that mean? That means, for example, that the annual event, the goal is not, let's put bums in seats and have a positive ROI. We're going to make some money on this thing. Okay, you want that. Okay, you want to make money. You want to have a part. But what can you do with that conference? Imagine that that's jet fuel to actually make a difference to all the other events and things you do during the other year. So what are you doing, for example, the conference to drive webinar attendance, to drive certification, interest in certification, to drive attendance at summits and one-day events and informal networking and all the other things that you might do throughout the year. So find the conference drives people to all these other things, and all these other things you're wiring people together, and you're learning a lot about what that community wants for the conference, and you're using these things to sell the conference and to build the conference. So it becomes like a virtuous cycle, okay, where the more and more interactions you're doing, okay, the greater the community. The greater the community, the more likely they'll be engaged, the more likely that each individual event will be better attended and will be more focused anyway. But I think that that's really the core of it. I mean, we want stickiness, we want engagement, we want to demonstrate member value, right? And thinking of things as solo events. This is our national conference. This is our summer workshop, etc. Means that you're missing an opportunity. My feeling, anyway, and certainly, the Brain Trust Professional Institute view is that we haven't fully plumbed sort of how to build the flywheel of that virtuous circle. I love the question.
We talked about networking and how important the crowd is. People come to meet people. So talk to me about how organizers and the marketers can influence that. So for example, you and I were at a one-day summit, a conference, where one of the sponsors was, a big name firm, and it was offered to all of their employees that their employees can attend the conference for free. So every person to your right and left, odds are that, that they were from this big firm. So the job title and the firm that, was a prestigious crowd. Like, what do you suggest?
So let me take a step back here, okay, and talk about marketing and getting people actually to the conference itself, because I think.
With that, we're going to break here for part one on impactful conference planning. We're going to pick up with more Q&A in part two. And if anything we talked about so far resonates with you, if you're curious about how we help organizations put on impactful events and conferences, do reach out. We'd be happy to have a conversation and share resources. You can email us at info@randallcraig.com or book a call at www.randallcraig.net/30, and we'll see you back for part two.